All right, guys, on the podcast today, I am so excited for you guys to hear from Kelsey Lensman. Kelsey is a person that I've been connected to through different facets of our businesses. And I cannot wait for you to hear her story, hear her mission, hear all the amazing things. So, Kelsey, welcome. Thank you so much for your time today.
Erin, I'm just so excited to be here. Number one, I love your energy. And I know who's listening to this are like, they keep tuning in because of it. So I just cannot wait to provide value to you guys and everybody listening and get ready to rock and roll with it.
I love it, Kelsey. Awesome. Let's just hop right in. I would love for you to kind of start a little bit with sharing about your story, right? Your personal wellness story, a little bit about yourself, and just kind of how you got started to where you are now.
Yeah. Oh man. And I'm not going to rabbit hole because I could probably rabbit hole many, many times in this, but kind of the long and short of it is high school. I was an athlete. That's what I, viewed myself as. And I didn't even realize that was a big part of my identity. And then until I didn't have it, but I went to college. I rowed for Ohio State my freshman year. And when I was done with that freshman year rowing, I then focused more on sports medicine. So that's where like injury prevention, really helping people not just prevent injuries, but then overcome them short and long term. And so my whole identity of, hey, as an athlete was no longer there anymore. And I bring that piece of it up because that next year, my sophomore year, it was like who am I? And I remember literally, and I'll share this story just a little bit. I remember waking up one morning and I walked into my bathroom and I looked in the mirror and I did not see myself anymore. Like I saw this kind of shell of a human where I'm
Yeah.
like, you're doing the right thing, you're getting the good grades, you're do like marking off the check boxes, right? But I didn't feel like myself. And I'm not saying physically I didn't completely look like myself, but I didn't even look like myself, you
Right.
know? And so I remember at that point, I'm like, all right, Kels, like you either keep going down this path where, you just don't feel like yourself and you're doing the right thing, but it's really not leading to the outcome that you want, or you make a change.
Yeah.
And Aaron, at that part, it was so hard for me because like I knew I wanted to make a change, but where do I start? Right.
Totally. Totally.
And I remember saying like to myself, like, Kels, just get back in the gym. Like you haven't really been working out at all. You really don't even know what you're doing in the gym right now, but like just get yourself there and keep showing up. So then I just kept showing up at the gym. I remember I was bench pressing one day and I didn't know how to weight train or strength train as much. And I'm at this Ohio State gym, all these people are around, and I literally get stuck with the bar on my chest. And I have like six big dudes come like running over to me. And I'm like, well, that's embarrassing. So it was just a lot of I call it like just showing up ugly, meaning it's not pretty, it's not like rainbows and sunshine, but like you just keep showing up. And that really led to one me like rediscovering myself of like, man, I'm capable of more, but then also just refining myself and what I want my future to be. So then kind of that senior year, I ended up competing in bodybuilding. It has nothing to do with the body, but it has everything to do with like I did something that I didn't think that I could do.
Right.
And through that, 2 months before I graduated, I said, Kels, like you have this gut feeling. For me, it's a God thing to start a business. And I had no clue what I was doing, but I started it. And about 7 years later, here I am, and we help women all around the country, nutrition, training, and fitness.
I love it.
And we have all women's strength events too around the country. So the
Seriously,
long and
so
short of
cool.
it all.
I love it. So cool. And I love how you really touched on this concept of like doing things you didn't think you could do, right?
Mm.
Like that is one of the most powerful messages that I want you to continue to talk about inside our podcast interview today, because I know that's really the heartbeat of a lot of what you do, right? A huge piece to your mission is empowering women and girls on their journey to understanding like you are so much stronger than you think. You can do so much more than you even believe. And so
Mm.
I'd love for you to talk a little bit about just more inside your business, right? And maybe a little bit on one of the most insane challenges you have done called Mission 48. I would love for you to maybe speak on those things a little bit.
Oh, you are hitting to the heartbeat of why I'm on this earth, I feel like. So it's funny, Aaron, a lot of people see me today, they see me training on Instagram and they're just like, well, that's just how she is, well, that's just, she was born genetically that way, or, she's just somebody that loves getting up at 5 a.m. and work out. And I'm like, yeah, you don't see my alarm clock. And I'm like, no, not again. So people kind of have this perception of me where it's like, okay, that's just how she is. And I'm like, man, there's so much more to this. So when personally I first got started, I never thought I'd be, lifting over 100 pounds. I never thought I'd be on bodybuilding stages, doing powerlifting meets. Like I never thought that this version of me existed,
Right.
and I'm not saying I'm like on this pedestal and oh my gosh, look at me now. but I never thought this Kelsey 3.0 or 4.0 could get here, right? And I share that with your audience because it's like, well, if I can, that means anybody can, you
Yeah.
know, and that's such a firm believer, or like a firm belief in my message and my mission is like, well, if I can do it, literally anybody can, as long as you have the right people in your corner and the right game plan for you going forward.
Right.
And so that's really translated into, yes, like our coaching business. I really challenge them to like step out of their comfort zone and go do it. But then also we have our all women's strength events. And this is where I'll talk about Mission 48, but this is where I think it's going to hit home with your audience a ton is I never thought I'd be running events, never thought it would be, you know, something in my business. But I remember I was one day in the gym, this was about 3-4 years ago, and I had about 6 of my women in there. I mean, it's all ages,
Yeah.
but there's one specific woman that I remember 2 years prior. She walked up to me and she's like, Kels, I don't do this fitness thing. Like, I
Yeah.
don't work out. That's not me. Like, no, 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 I don't do that. And I'm like, okay, like we'll take it slow, like we're good. And so fast forward 2 years later, she's in the gym with me and these 6 women, right? And we're all going for a 1 rep max bench press, which they're like, what in the Lord am I doing? So I have her get under the bar. I have a specific amount of weight on it. And she looks at me and she's so nervous. Like you can see she's shaking a little bit. She's like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. And I'm like, take a deep breath. Like, you got this. I know you can do this. And so I unracked the bar for her. She brought the barbell down to her chest, and then boom, she pushed it up like it was like 2 pounds. And
Wow.
I will never forget this, Erin. She popped off the bench. The whole like gym is going crazy. Her
Wow.
face is just elated of, I can't believe I just did that. Like it's just,
Yeah.
it's almost in disbelief and shock.
Right.
And I remember saying in that moment, I was like, you know what? We need to create an environment for women where it's not just about getting smaller 24/7. It's not just about, you know, the Instagram fitness stuff.
Right.
It's truly empowering for women to show themselves what they're capable of. And her and so many other women of our in our events, it's like, well, if I could do that bench press, or if I can do a 200-pound deadlift, what else in my life am I settling for that I didn't think that I could do, you
Yeah.
know?
Totally.
And so that is the heartbeat of like what we do. I can kind of riff off Mission 48, but I just think that's so important for your audience to really think about not just, you know, you or myself or the woman that I talked about, but really asking themselves, like, what am I really capable of? Or,
Yeah.
hey, you know what? Have I really not even tapped into that? And I'm already self-limiting myself of what I think that I can do when really it's so much more out there.
Yeah, I love that. And it's such a powerful reminder for us as women, as humans, because we
Mhm.
can get into that headspace of trying to shrink ourselves or thinking that we can't really reach for these huge goals that we maybe have inside our brains, inside our calling, whatever it might be. I would love for you to still talk a little bit more about Mission 48 because I just think
Love it.
it's such an incredible challenge. And I
Yeah.
think it's cool for people to hear like this is what you committed to and really pushed yourself into.
Yeah.
Um, and just kind of sharing more of your heart around that.
Okay. It's either amazing or crazy, whoever
Yeah.
you they're like, because it's the coolest thing, or you are just insane and I don't even know where to come from. So actually it's interesting. The person that inspired it is from Utah. So about 3 years ago, I was watching a documentary and it was this guy from Utah and he did 50 Ironmans in 50 states in 50 days. And I was like, that's insane.
Wild.
But when I was watching it, Erin, it's the reason why it impacted me so deeply was not just, you know, accomplishing it. Like that's an amazing feat of itself. But it was the high moments, the low moments, the moments that he wanted to give up, the moments that he's like, well, why am I even doing this? And that really hit home for me because I'm like, I remember my journey and currently in it, there's moments where I'm like, what in the heck am I doing? You know, and
Right.
just being transparent about that. And so I remember I was sitting there and I had an idea pop in my brain and I was like, oh, I was like, well, what if, Kels, you did 48 different competitions, everything from biking to running to powerlifting to Olympic lifting to CrossFit. And it was originally in 48 states, so the inland states, and in 48 weeks. What was my first idea for it? Okay. And I was
Okay.
like, cool, I could do a Spartan race on a Saturday. Something's always happening on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And then I could speak at a school for young girls on a Wednesday, you know, because I
Yeah.
really, that's just such a heartbeat of what I want to speak about is confidence and building young girls up too. And so I sat on that idea for 2 years because I was number one, afraid of it. Number two, I honestly didn't think I could do it. I'm like, well, how do you even start to pull that together?
Yeah.
And I remember 2 years later, it was just this, I call it kind of this whisper in my heart. Like it would come up and I would shove it down and then it
Yeah.
would come up again. I'm like, no, 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 we're not messing with that. But finally to a point where I'm like, Kelsey, you cannot stop denying, or you have to stop denying this right now. Like
Yeah.
it keeps coming up for a reason. And so then I remember one morning, and I share this for a reason. One morning I was gonna go train, and like I normally do every single morning. And usually I put on music, but for some reason, Erin, that morning I put on a podcast.
Wow.
Don't know why, just happened. And I clicked the boom, first podcast that I saw. And I remember that night before I was just praying, and I was like, dear God, like, please give me the biggest sign in the world of like to do this or not do it, because
Yeah.
I'm afraid of it. And number two,
Right.
like I can't accomplish it just on my own, you know? And so once again, I listened to that podcast. And as I was listening to it, it was this guy interviewing this other gentleman about these missions that he went on, like these crazy physical feats, where then he would partner with a charity and raise money for a charity, and just really help people tap into something greater than themselves. So I
Right.
was like, okay, kind of weird. First of all, it's very similar to what I want to do with Mission 48. And then second thing, and this is what I really want your audience to hear. He said this quote, and I was sold. I was literally mid back squat. I think I had like 200 pounds on my back. And he said this thing. He was like, so many people live in the 5 and 6s. Like life is good, but not really great, but also not terrible. It's like just rinse and repeat 5 and 6s over and over and over again. And you don't even remember what you did last month, you know?
Right.
And he's like, so many people want to go for the 9s and 10s, but they're too afraid to, because what if it becomes a 1?
Yeah.
And I remember I was mid back squat, and I was like, Kels, your 9 and 10 is Mission 48. Like it's this crazy dream in your heart that you're afraid of, but you're not pursuing it because you think, what if it becomes a 1? And
Right.
I said, in that moment, I'm like, you are freaking going through it through hell or high water.
Yeah.
And so I decided in that moment. And then a year later, as I was pulling all the details together, about 3 months before I left, I switched it to 48 days. So then I ended up doing 48 different fitness competitions in 48 states, and the kickers in 48 days. And then we
Wow.
also raised money for a charity called Rocks, where they do 20-week programs in schools for young girls to talk about things like confidence and all those pieces that I think young girls need now more than ever today.
Yeah. Gosh,
It
what an
was
awesome
really
story. I mean, it's so cool and inspiring, right? To see women just go after something that they feel like is stirring in their heart, right?
great. Mm-hmm.
Um, and again, I think too often we just shove it down. Like you said, you shove it down, you hide it away, you
Yeah.
pull it out and put it in a drawer and say, yeah, maybe another time.
Yep.
But it's just so powerful when you get into that headspace and say, no, I'm committing to this because I want to, because I feel called to, because I know that I can and I'm capable and I will figure it out. And that's why I wanted you to share that story, because I want women to really understand the importance of this headspace, really with anything that you're doing in your life, but especially when it comes to taking care of yourself, going after your goals, stuff like that. And so I love that, Kelsey. Thank you so much for sharing
Oh,
that. So powerful. So
oh,
cool.
I appreciate that. And
So,
I'm
so
going to
cool.
interject real quick, especially for your audience there too, is a lot of times, and I did this for myself with Mission 48, is we'll automatically disqualify ourselves of what we don't think that we're capable of, right? Well,
Yeah.
it's like, well, that's for Susie over there, or that's for, Christy on Instagram, but that's not for me, and so we'll automatically disqualify ourselves of things we don't think that we can do, things that are a little bit outside of our comfort zone of like, it just feels like a really big reach, or things that we feel like is so far away from where we're starting at right now. And
Yeah.
especially for those in their fitness journey, we work obviously with a lot of women in their fitness journey too. And it's like, well, they'll say like, oh yeah, I really don't want that, but they really do. They just don't think that they can get it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So what I would say for those women, especially listening to this, is like, just give yourself permission to go after what you want and what you want.
Yeah.
I did not give myself permission for 2 years because I was afraid. And so when you finally give yourself permission to say, hey, you know what? I'm freaking going for it. It's amazing. It's not easy, but it's amazing how certain things start to come together when you give yourself permission to be able to do it. So I just think that's so deep in my heart right there.
Yeah, I love that. And so, so important for us to remember, because again, sometimes it is that permission. Like that has to be that first mindset step of giving yourself the permission and then figuring it out along the way, right? So much of it is you have to just figure it out as you go, right? Kelsey, I'd love for you to kind of jump into, you talked about,
Yep.
your passion, the Mission 48 challenge that you went through personally. And you talked a little bit about, how you work also with women on their fitness goals, right? On their fitness wellness journey. So I'd love for you to speak
Yep.
and switch a little bit to what do you feel like is the biggest health hurdle that you most often see when it comes to clients or women that you're working with?
Oh, I'll say the first thing that came to my brain, I think for women specifically, and this is a statistic that I'm making up, do not quote me on this, but I would say 85 to 90% of women that come to us are heavily under eating.
Yeah.
And they think, oh, you know what? For me to get to this goal, I just need to eat less. Or, hey, you know what? I'm eating too much. And I did this too on my journey. When I first started, I'm like, well, I guess I'm just eating too much.
Yeah.
And I wanted, a certain physique, a body composition, and I also wanted to get stronger. And I had no idea that I was eating too little. And so what we don't realize, and a lot of women don't realize, is actually when we're under eating, we're under fueling, and that's actually inhibiting us towards the goals. Even if your goal is weight loss or your goal is to lean out, a lot of women actually need to fuel their bodies a little bit more to allow their body to work with them instead of against it. And I tell women all the time, when you work with it, oh my Lord, do you realize it doesn't have to be such a grind all the time?
Yeah.
And it actually wants you to do well. So I will say, as a kind of a rough thought, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. And I see that too, right? And I love that you're kind of reaffirming that, because I think we've been programmed to believe that less is more, especially when it comes to the nutritional component to our wellness. And so often that can be one of the biggest hurdles for women when it comes to progress, body comp change, and so much more. So I love that you touched on that. I'd love for you to speak a little bit more now, Kelsey, on just kind of what we can do as a society, as coaches, just as a collective, to really continue to empower women to step into their own strength. Like, what do you feel like is something that we can be paying attention to or really focusing our message around most?
I think initially, and this is the first phrase once again that popped in my brain, is stronger, not smaller.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is women have no clue how strong they actually are
Yeah.
physically, mentally, emotionally, in all areas. And I'll say specifically physically, is a lot of women come in, and once again, I'll share a quick story. There's a girl that came in to goblet squat, right? And that's when you have a dumbbell right here. And she picked, I think, 30 pounds, which is pretty dang good. Like, I'm not,
Yeah.
anything disqualifying your 30 pounds, but she started doing the reps and she's like, yeah, that's really hard. And I knew her hard was not 30 pounds. Like, I knew it was like way above that. And
Yeah.
so I was like, hey, pick up the 40. And she did the 40. She's like, wait, I could do that. And then I was like, hey, you can do more. Pick up the 60. And she did 60 and she flew by through that. This girl, this woman ended up doing 100-pound goblet squat and
Wow.
did it like it was nothing. And so I share that to say, like, her hard she thought was 30 pounds. Like, that's what she thought her hard was. Her hard actually was 100 pounds.
Yeah.
How much different is that, right? And so that, like I said, I think that's important for coaches to understand, for women training to understand. I always say, challenge your hard. Usually we think what our challenging weight is actually a lot less. And I always say, with good technique, right? Make sure it's good technique. I'm not
Yeah.
saying, pick up the heavy weight and just do a bro lift with it. Like, make sure
Right.
you have good technique, good mind muscle connection. But to really maintain and build muscle, we need to challenge ourselves here, and to really maintain and build not only just the physique, but the internal health that we want to build too. Oh man, it comes from really challenging yourself and focusing more on the weight training than just trying to make yourself smaller through cardio,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's what I will say through and through is, one, stronger, not smaller, and to really push yourself outside of your comfort zone to show yourself what you can do.
I love that. Challenge your hard. That's such a powerful and good message. And
Mm.
it's something that can be so applicable to so many different facets of our life, right? Not even just training in the gym or what you're doing in your wellness, but what you can do in your day-to-day life. Like, really be willing to step outside and challenge your heart. I love that so much. Kelsey, I'd love for you to share how you landed on the name EmpowHER Fitness, right? EmpowHER Official, all the things you're doing. Like, I would love to know how you actually landed on that as your brand, that is kind of your focus with your business.
Oh, well, actually, so when I first started my company, I'll kind of give you guys a history of it. So I first started, and it was KML Movement, because my name
Okay.
is Kelsey Marie Lensman
Okay.
Movement. And then
Okay.
people would always screw up the KML because in the alphabet it's LMNOP.
Yeah.
And so I had that for about 3 years. And it was, once again, I was always very passionate about it being a movement. It's not just, about making women smaller or just about body comp goals. It's like, I want this to be a movement of women, of people really showing themselves what they can do. But it's funny, as we started expanding, I'm like, Kels, this is bigger than you. Like, I didn't want my name in it anymore. And so then we started our events. And I don't know, honestly, Erin, how we thought of Empower events. I think it was just we had our first event, and I remember saying after that, I'm like, what women felt today was empowered. They felt
Yeah,
empowered in their strength. They felt empowered in their body. They felt empowered in their mind. And it's just a different feeling when you feel capable and in control and like, I freaking got this.
totally.
And for me, that's what, when I say talk about fitness and the physical body, it unlocks this part within you that allows you to truly feel empowered in your life. And so it has been a journey to try to trademark it and all of that. So we're actually in the process of all that craziness, but that's exactly what I want women to leave with here, whether it be our coaching, whether it be our events, is like, I feel empowered and I feel like I'm in control of what my future is too.
It's so good. And something that I can relate on too, like just that mission and that drive of empowered knowledge, empowered decision making, just
Mm.
feeling empowered in what you're doing day in and day out for yourself, for your health, for your fitness, so much more. Like I can relate to that. And I love how you shared how you came up to that for your business, because it's so incredibly cool for women.
Yeah, and I think too, it's a lot of times women, anybody, not even just women, but like we'll outsource our power, right? It's like,
Right.
well, let me go to Susie over here. I just need this thing outside of me. And we're constantly looking for things outside of us to get this feeling internally within us. And I
Yeah.
always say, like, there's so much more within you. You just got to unlock it. You just got to unleash it. And so I really want to change the narrative of like looking for something outside of you, whether it be a supplement or this thing or this, that. It's like, those can help you to an extent, but you don't even realize all the stuff that's within you. And when you can unlock that, game over for you, baby, in the best way possible,
I love
because
that.
it's going to be a force to be reckoned with going forward.
I love that. Game over. I love that. Kelsey, I would love to kind of switch gears here and talk a little bit about Sync. So you and I
Yeah.
have connected within the Sync partnership. For those that are listening, Sync is a community group, really an overall community and focus on hormone health, women's health, that was created by Jenny Swisher. She is someone that Kelsey and I have connected with on a very deep level, because Jenny has an incredible servant heart and it really is doing incredible work in the women's health space. And so one of the things that Kelsey and Jenny created inside a partnership with Sync was the Sync Fitness program, or is the Sync Fitness program. And
Yeah.
I'd love for you to talk a little bit about the Sync partnership and really what you're hoping this resource gifts to women inside
Yeah.
the wellness space.
Oh, this is good. So when I first initially met Jenny, obviously I heard about her hormone course, and I say this with so much love, and you'll understand why I say this is right now everybody and their mom is a hormone coach. You know, like everybody on Instagram, it's like, "Oh, I'm a hormone specialist." So I always go into it very skeptical of like, "Okay, did you just, take this 2-day course and you're there, or like do you actually know what you're talking about?"
Right.
So I remember when I first got connected with Jenny, I was like, hey, like I'd love to kind of get some information on your course and understand it, just to make sure of like, okay, is this legit, or is this, just a little quick thing, and it's not really helpful towards women.
Right.
So I share this day, I got in her course and I started just consuming all of it. And I was like, this is freaking amazing.
Yeah.
She's not just some poser hormone coach. Like she knows what she's talking about.
Yeah.
And I could tell through her videos and her passion and just how her and I talked, it's like she wants to serve women for the better. Not
Yeah.
only does she have that servant heart, and she has really good education. I'm like, I'm sold. Like it's hard to find somebody that really knows their stuff
Yeah.
and has such good character with that.
Yeah.
So as Jenny was talking, and she was talking about the fitness component, and obviously know, and I believe in, especially with women, like we really need to train smart with our bodies. We can't just be doing all these, crazy hit classes 24/7 or working ourselves to the bone. Yeah, you feel like you're working hard, but that doesn't also mean working smart,
Right.
right?
Right.
And once again, a lot of women that come to us, we actually have them do a lot different things. We stop doing all the dang cardio that they're doing. We start them lifting, we start them strength training, and we actually help them work smart at the same time. And they're like, Kels, this is actually so much better than what I had or was doing before.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so as Jenny and I were collaborating, she's like, Kelsey, I really want to put together this fitness program for women that syncs with their cycle, right? And allows them to work with their body. And I was like, Jenny, let me kind of draw some things up. This is my thoughts. And as we were collaborating on it, we're like, we're sold.
Yeah.
And so the sync program that we created is it has so much amazing attributes with Jenny and then Dr. Page. And then I created a 28-day sync program where it's just follow along videos as you go. And we really work with the female cycle, whether you actually have a cycle, we have obviously the cycle syncing with that, or maybe your menopause, we do syncing with the moon, and she teaches a lot about that. where, like I said, it's working with the women's body and
Yeah.
just syncs it up with it, which is such an important key to what we're doing.
Yeah. Is that something, I'm curious? Have you done that kind of training, or have you dipped into that kind of training with your clients before, kind of getting exposed to what you've done with Jenny?
To an extent. So I'll even say for me personally, like obviously from a cycle standpoint, like some days you feel like you could lift, the
Yeah.
freaking world. Some days you're like, oh my God, the bar is heavy,
Yeah. Yeah.
So I never prior to did like a full sync program where I did things on specific days, but I would ebb and flow my training regards with where I'm at in my cycle. So like in certain parts, I wouldn't go as heavy. I'd really focus on more mind muscle connection. And in other parts, I'm like, all right, let's hit the PRs, baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we dabbled in that prior to. I personally dabbled in that because I'm always a believer of like I need to do it before I also give it to somebody. And then with our clients, once again, we really not cycle sync them fully, meaning the 28-day calendar with it, but once again, we'll segment their workouts and their training depending on where they're at in their cycle, which can be helpful. So
Yeah.
it's been huge. But I also say too at the same time, real quick, Aaron, is I also want women to be empowered in their cycle. And just
Yeah.
because they're in a specific phase in their cycle, it doesn't mean that you still can't, you're not strong, you can't lift heavy. So
Right.
I always say, once again, don't outsource your body. If you're feeling amazing and it doesn't make sense, cool, go for it.
Right.
Like allow yourself to really rely on internally versus just externally. And
Right.
so with that cycle syncing program, once again, I really advocate, once again, like really looking at internally for you.
Yeah, and I love that. Like that really I feel like is the main takeaway that you and Jenny have both shared, is like the power of learning how to listen to your body, right?
Yep.
Learning how to dig into your intuition rather than, like you said, outsourcing the plan or outsourcing your vision or your mission or where you feel like you want to go when it comes to your personal health and wellness goals. Like
Yep.
that idea of really digging into what your body needs and when during different times throughout the month based on your cycle and really just based on your overall unique bio individuality. Like that is so powerful and something that I've super appreciated inside the sync program, and with the way you train, like the way you teach, the way you train, the messaging you have inside the program, Kelsey. Like it's been incredible. And I know that's been the feedback from so many women already. And I can't wait to get more women connected to our sync community, to you as a trainer, and to the knowledge that Jenny is sharing, because it really is game changing. It really
Oh,
is.
I appreciate that. I know a lot of women message me on Instagram. They're like, I'm not used to these rest times. I'm not
Yeah.
used to like actually pushing. And I was like, yeah, like when you once again learn how to train smart, the game changes for you. The results come a little bit better. The negative side effects, especially decreases. So once again, I always say yes, train hard, but also train smart. And when we do both together, it's amazing how your body works with you there.
Yeah, so true. Kelsey, cannot thank you enough for all that you've been doing inside Sync and really everything that you share. I cannot express enough how much I want women to continue to get connected to you and your incredible mission and your heart and just what you're doing inside the health and wellness space, especially for women and girls. It's so cool to watch and so cool to be a part of. Before we kind of end here, Kelsey, I like to ask two questions kind of at the end of my interviews to kind of get more of your personal heart, personal perspective around kind of the mindset, mental and emotional wellness component. As someone who coaches in the health and wellness space, I'm super passionate about mental health, right? And I really try to focus a lot on empowering women and empowering people to focus on some of those inside out pieces and those invisible pieces to health that we don't always pay the most attention to.
Yep. Yep.
So I'd love your opinion on this when it comes to just sharing our stories, right? Sharing where we've been, sharing what we've gone through, sharing where we're going. Why do you feel like being transparent about our journeys and sharing our stories can be so powerful, not only for ourselves, but for other people?
Oh Lord, Aaron, you're hitting my heart right here. I always say your story is your superpower.
Yeah.
Your story is your superpower. And the highs, the lows, the everything in between. Because what I truly believe to my heart, and I share this so much with our community too, is the things that you've been through, either other people have been through, are going through, or there's people that are going to go through it, you
Yeah.
know? And I think especially when we live in an Instagram world of like, oh, Susie and her whole family has just everything together. No, they don't.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on in their head. You don't know what's going on in their day to day. And I truly believe, not just from a vulnerability of like, everybody feels sorry for me. I don't believe in that. But when it's truly from a place of authenticity of like, hey, I had a great day today, or hey, I had a really hard day. it allows people to understand like they're not just so alone. You know, when other people have a hard day, no, you're not alone in that. You know, I've had hard days. I have days that I don't want to go work out. I have days where I'm like, man, the last thing that I want to do is that. And I try to be really open about that in my journey, and my story, because once again, your story is your superpower and it leads you to where you're really meant to be. I truly believe that from a God perspective of like, hey, he has you go through things. He avoids things. He gives things to you to develop you as a human, but to also give back to others around you. And when we stop just the Instagram highlight reel and we
Yeah.
really get authentic with people, that's when it gets good. And
Yeah.
it can be a little bit uncomfortable. It can be vulnerable. I know that's a big thing for me of like, oh, but I don't want to share that. Like I want to share
Yeah.
the nice stuff. I don't want to share that stuff that I've been,
Right.
challenging on my heart, but that's where real growth and opportunity is, and also connection is, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's such a good reminder for all of us because I believe that too. Like it's just that's how we connect, right? That's the power of vulnerability, right? Brene Brown is one of my favorites. She just always talks about the power of vulnerability and how that connects us and our stories connect us. And I love that, Kelsey. As a wrap up, last question. Do you have a favorite mantra or like mindset quote or something that
Oh,
you hold on to in your life that reminds you of the importance of taking care of yourself, prioritizing your well-being, like making sure that your needs are prioritized in the chaos of life?
oh man. I will say, Aaron, very once again, vulnerable. And honestly, I tap into different things in different days.
Yeah.
So there's not just one thing where I'm like, oh, this is it to pull it out. For me, I think actually the guy that I inspired Mission 48, he talked about a bag of whys. Okay. And he says, when you do these crazy challenges or when you start a fitness journey, it's not usually just one why. Like that might be starting out with maybe your why is like, oh, I just want to feel better, or I just want to look better, or
Right.
hey, I'm doing this for my kids. But he's like, when you really embark on something big, you need to have a bag of whys where one day you might pull out the bag and be like, hey, this is for my kids.
Yeah.
One day you might pull out of the bag and say, hey, you know what? I want to look amazing and feel amazing and be the most confident human internally and externally.
Right.
And so that's Aaron. I'm going to kind of translate that to kind of the mantras and what I pull is I think I have a bag of, hey, what do you need today, Kels? And
Yeah.
sometimes it's a, hey, you're stronger than you think. Sometimes it's a, hey, these challenges are actually preparing you for what's ahead. Sometimes it's a, hey, God placed this dream on your heart. Quit freaking playing small,
Right.
And so I think that's once again, I just kind of pull from a little bit of everything. But I think probably one of the biggest ones is like God placed you here for a reason, for a purpose, on purpose. And when you really start to believe that in the hard days and the good days and the challenging days, it allows you to say, hey, there's a greater purpose than me. Yeah,
Yeah.
you might be having a hard day, Kels, but hey, girl, you got to keep going because there's people that need you out here. And I
Yeah.
share that to say with your audience too of, hey, if you're listening to this and it's a hard freaking day, hey, you're placed here for a purpose, on purpose. And you continuing to put one foot in front of the other, you're going to be amazed of the ripple effect that you're going to have on people that you might not even know 10 years, 20 years, 50 years from now. So I think for purpose, on purpose is really important.
I love that, Kelsey. So good, so powerful. I am so incredibly grateful for you. What an awesome conversation.
Oh, Aaron, love it.
I am overflowing and cannot wait for people to tune in and to hear more about just what your heart is, right? And all of the incredible things you've done, everything you're doing to serve inside the sync community, and just the ways that people can continue to learn from you. So I would love, before we kind of officially wrap it up, tell
Yeah.
people how they can find you, a website, Instagram, those kinds of
Yeah.
things.
Oh man, so it's really easy. Honestly, it's just my name. Everything is at Kelsey Lensman, which I bet Aaron will put it in the show notes
Yep, I
too.
will.
So Instagram, I'm usually pretty active on. My website is kelseylensman.com. Those are usually like my two main places. And you'll probably also see my dog in the process too,
I
because
love
he's
it.
on my Instagram a lot. So I appreciate, first of all, Aaron, for you having me, and everybody tuning in. I'm gonna encourage you to take one thing from this, right? Like don't take all the things, take one thing and actually put it in. And I'm going to challenge the audience too to message Aaron. I'm like, hey, this is my one big takeaway from this,
Yeah.
because I'll tell you, podcasting, you really sometimes don't get that also instantaneous feedback. So it's really helpful to hear, hey, this was helpful in your journey. So message Aaron. I'm excited to hear it.
I love it, Kelsey. I will share any messages that I get. And like Kelsey shared, I will have all of the information about how to connect with Kelsey, how to get more information on the Sync Fitness program, and all the details related to just continuing the conversation or getting connected to either of us in the show notes of this podcast. If you guys have questions, feedback, feel free to reach out to either of us at any point in time. Kelsey, thanks again for your time today. So grateful for you, my friend.
Erin, thank you so much. And I'm so excited about the mission that you're on.
Thanks, friend. You too. See you guys in the next one.